Hi, so here we are with this lecture. In this one, we'll be talking about cardiovascular endurance. Okay. Now, cardiovascular endurance, in loose terms, what we call stamina for playing sport. And as you can see, Varun here is doing what's called the cross trainer. Okay. And the cross trainer sometimes, in some places, there's a slight difference, but it's also called a skiing machine. One of the things now we have to understand in cardiovascular endurance is basically sort of 2 or 3 ways by which you can train your stamina. One, you can use machines like these. Okay. Two, you can use your body weight, so just regular body weight to do exercises such as running, such as maybe jumps and so on and so forth. And the third becomes if you're doing something in water. Okay. So inside water, you'd obviously be doing swimming, and the whole breathing pattern that changes. Now, coming to machines, there are different machines, right? Now, one of them is what's called the cross trainer. One thing to remember, and especially this is important when you go to different gyms, not every cross trainer has a universal path. Different companies make these models. Each cross trainer you will notice will have a slightly different path. The angle might be different depending on the company, how good it is, what reputation it has. The movement might be much smoother. Sometimes you might find it slightly different. So this is something to understand, that there's no universal sort of rule that each cross trainer will be behaving the same way or moving the same way. Okay? Some of the arm actions you might find will be a bit different. Sometimes they'll go a bit further than normal, sometimes they won't. So these are some of the important things to realize, that you have to adjust according to the machine. You cannot think that, oh, in my gym, the machine used to be like this and it's so much better. It might be because you're used to it. So if you're not used to that pattern and if you're finding it that it's slightly different, then make sure that you adapt accordingly. Now, the standard rule of intensity, where you don't push beyond your capacity. Okay? Always try to push rather less, especially on the first day. So, when did this come into play for an athlete? Now, those watching would say that, okay, if he's an athlete and if he's playing, say, badminton, is he going to play badminton on a machine? So there's this often common question that training on machines is not functional. Absolutely, yes. Okay. But the only specific thing about any sport is that you have to do the sport itself. If he is a badminton player and if he plays badminton, that's the only way he can improve badminton. The rest, all things are done to help the player and assist him or her in their stamina or their strength or their flexibility. So as Varun is right now doing this, some of the common things to keep in mind. Okay. One is that the person should be relaxed while doing this. You don't have to tighten up, you don't have to push beyond your capacity. On a cross trainer, when this comes into play is generally post injuries. It becomes a great movement to do. The second becomes when they are probably in their off season. Okay. Occasionally, when they are in their in season as well, you can sort of add this depending on the intensity. If the heart rate is very high, you can add that as well. Okay. So all depends on the specific requirements, what type of exercises he wants to do or she wants to do at what time. Now, one thing to remember in this, what's the difference between this and maybe an exercise cycle and a treadmill? Okay, so you generally see these three machines, right? You'll see a cross trainer, you'll see a cycle, and you'll see a treadmill. Now, on this, as you can see, there's no impact. Okay, his legs are smooth, going smooth. There's no impact happening at any point on the joints. Okay. The second thing that's not there is here, he doesn't have a seat. Okay. So when it comes to impact and we look at it, the cycle becomes the one of the least sort of impactful or rather stressful cardiovascular exercises. And what is the reason? One, in cycle there's no impact. Second, his body weight would be supported by a seat. Okay, and then he moves. Here, this becomes slightly harder because of the fact that there's no impact, but still his body weight is carrying the whole load. And the third becomes the treadmill. Treadmill, you're moving all your body weight, all your weight is coming on the legs. Okay, so there's impact as well. So there's impact of full body. Here, non-impact, okay, but load. Cycle is least load, and least impact. So these are things we have to take into consideration when we choose a machine. Okay? So the cycle would obviously help somebody who's coming back from possibly a knee surgery, maybe who's recovering, or somebody who's been off season, hasn't been training. So first could be a cycle, then could be this, and then could be a treadmill. That could be one of the options of moving. Okay? Now, as you can see, his movement. Most cross trainers will have a handle to hold where it can be fixed, where you can do your reading, okay, of your heart rate, and then you have these moving arms as well. So Varun, if you can hold this, yeah. Now here, depending on the height of the person, the limb length, okay, they hold. How far do you want to go? You would want to maybe go slightly, if you can hold higher, Varun. Yeah. You would want where there's full extension happening of the elbow joint. Okay. You don't want it happening where the elbow stays closed. You want full extension and back, as straight as possible. Okay. You don't want to lose any range while doing any of these movements. So that's why the ideal would be where they can go full, but not so far that he has to reach. So if you hold higher, Varun, just to show, now you can see he has to reach. Now, in this action, if we look at it from a kind of mechanics point of view, you can see he has to stretch his shoulder blades, right? He is pushing all the way and then pulling, right? Now, this one of the issues that comes with this pushing is that as he's stretching all out, okay, the scapulae, okay, the muscles behind, they might be due to, it's of course not a heavy load, but the difference is that because he's stretching maximally, he is still going to be using these muscles to stretch repeatedly. If he does this for 20 minutes, it's for 20 minutes that his arms are going into full range, okay, at the end range. So that's why we have to take these things into consideration. Cardiovascular exercise generally is a very safe pattern. The only difference becomes if the person is doing it for a long time. Half an hour of doing this, okay, versus half an hour of doing this, the chances of the muscles behind maybe just stretching and probably getting a pull is much higher when you stretch further. Now, one more thing to realize with this, okay, is that though it's a very safe exercise, you have to take into account if you're working with athletes, if there's somebody who's, say, a tennis player and who's already maybe in the past had a bit of some pull in one of the external rotators, that movement, or rather that strain with this movement coupled for half an hour, this could cause some amount of maybe a spasm or a pull. And occasionally, strength and conditioning coaches, when we do a workout and then somebody has a spasm, and if we don't investigate, we don't know why it's caused. So sometimes when any person, any of your athletes comes to you and tells, I have this pain or this is feeling a bit tight, go back to the previous 3 workouts. Find out exactly what is it that you did different. Okay. Was there the cross trainer that you did, which looks as harmless as it is, which is harmless, but is it something you did and did you make them do with the arms held very high where they were reaching? Maybe that reaching for somebody maybe who's not extremely tall, they might also have to bend at the waist and go. So again, if you can just hold high, Arun, just to show, and you can see how he has to flex at the hip joint as well. Okay, so he's bent forward and he's doing. His weight will be on the toes. This itself could be for 20 minutes, putting some load on the back. So these are points as strength coaches we need to keep in mind. Okay? Just so that we know that we are not straining and causing any harm from an exercise which is generally safe. Okay? So let's get back to good posture. So this becomes optimum posture. His hip is below his shoulder is below his ears and head. Okay, so the whole body is resting. The head is resting on the shoulders and the shoulders are resting on the hips. Okay, so that's how the body is staying. These are points which we need to remember. Okay, there's a multiple range of points we've gone through now. Posture, the reaching forward, why to choose this exercise, and when to choose this exercise. So which one is the best? If we have to ask, is running the best on a treadmill? Is cycling the best? Is cross trainer or is a rower the best? None of them are the best. It's like a medicine. You have to take the right one for the right ailment. Okay. So doesn't mean that the cross trainer is a bad exercise or that the treadmill is better. If someone's recovering from knee pain and you're making them run, then that's a bad exercise at that point in time. Okay. If somebody's got just recovered from knee injury and they've been able to cycle, and you continue them on the cycle, though they can progress, then maybe at that time the cycle is not the best and this is a better option. So it all depends on at which stage you are from a progress point of view. Okay? So within this machine now, there are different ways to make it harder. Okay? So if you can, Varun, just make it slightly higher, just so that people will be able to notice what happens when resistance goes high. Yeah. Level 3. So we were at level 1 earlier, right? Now it's at level 3. So he will find a lot more resistance to move. His legs will have to really push. Okay. Can you make it higher just to show? Okay, not that we want to kill Varun when training, but we want to show how hard it can be. As you can see, now this is where resistance comes even more. Make it the highest. I just want to show people that how even in cardiovascular, too much resistance can make it into almost like a muscle endurance exercise. There you go. Now, is this actually cardiovascular? Do you think you'll be able to do this for 3 minutes? Okay, reduce it. Bring it back to 1, just so that it's easy. So any exercise, when it becomes so hard, and when you go through the energy systems, you will realize that anything where you cannot do it for more than 3 minutes, okay, then you are actually not doing a cardiovascular exercise. Cardiovascular or aerobic exercise, what is the whole fundamental? The fundamental is that it has to be submaximal and it has to be longer than 3 minutes and onwards from there. If he is not able to move at all and can hardly do maybe 30 seconds, so which energy system are we going into? Again, that's a question you have to remember from your um, lectures from the one we did on energy systems. Okay, so something important here to understand that if you make the resistance too high, it just changes the whole mechanics, the way the body pushes, the way your heart reacts, the way your lungs react. Okay. So as he's doing this movement now, there are some things which are shown on this. One will be distance, okay. One will be the calories, one of course will be time, and one will be the difficulty, which will be in resistance level. So most of these machines tend to have a plus minus. Okay. If you go to any gym, these machines are common. So you get on there, make the athlete do something which they can do comfortably. Don't get them to do something which they are pushing beyond their capacity. Okay. Uh, as you start off, some things to note. One is the body, something else is the knees. Okay, as you can see, his knees are soft. He is not sort of locking them. Can you just show just a few steps where you hyperextend the knee? There you go. Okay, so this is what would be considered wrong. Okay, where you're hyperextending unnecessarily, all his body weight is coming onto his knee. Okay, where he is locking the knee. So any exercise, standard rule: don't ever lock your elbow, don't ever lock your knee. Okay. So as you can see now, he's back to regular movement. Okay, soft knees. Okay, making sure it's a very smooth movement. Now sometimes to make it harder, sometimes people might dip down a bit. So can you just stay low and do? Yeah. So sometimes this can also be done. Okay, just to get some excess load on the quadriceps. Now, really speaking, this not too important, because if he's doing this, it's harder. But it's harder because his drop down, the quadriceps are not able to get into the muscles and joints are not getting into full extension and full range. So get back up. Now when he goes up, the body is relaxed. Now, why would the other one not be that suitable? The reason is simple. If he has to do something by squatting to load his legs, we have to first ask what is the reason for choosing this exercise. Okay. So when we choose the type of exercise, the FIT principle, right? The frequency, intensity, time, and type. Why did we choose this type of exercise? It is to build cardiovascular endurance. Cardiovascular endurance, or if we call it aerobic capacity, what is the whole rule? You want to do something for more than 3 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. If he squats down, will he be able to continue for that long? Not much. One reason is that why you shouldn't be doing it here. You want to build cardiovascular, you want to build muscle endurance, get the person, let them do squats, let them do a leg press, let them do wall chair, let them do leg extension. There are enough exercises which work muscle endurance. When you are looking at cardiovascular endurance, we are looking at the heart, we are looking at the lungs, we are looking at the ability of the heart and lungs to last longer. Okay. We of course want the legs to be strong, but there's a different modality for that. There's a different type. There's a different exercise for that, and that would be, like I said, squat, lunges. There's various exercises. So depending on which exercise we do, you get results. So making this now into something where, let's assume we put a bag on him, a weighted jacket, and which weighs probably, for argument's sake, 25 kilos. And that 25 kilos, of course, will make it harder. But would it make sense to add that, or rather to make the legs work? Like I said, should I make him do other exercises? So these are questions which we as strength and conditioning coaches should know. If you can know this, why you're doing something and why you're sort of promoting an exercise or prescribing, you will be able to prescribe better. Otherwise, it just becomes a case of just making something harder. And often this will be seen across various exercises. We just make things hard because if he seems comfortable, this mistake is made by coaches, by strength coaches, physiotherapists often made mistake. Just because he looks comfortable while doing it and I have to make it harder, I'll make him go down, or I'll put a bag onto him, or I'll just say, okay, increase the speed, come on, harder, come on, let's do, let's go train harder. You don't have to train harder, you have to train good. I won't even say train smart. More than even smarter, you have to train good, because you have to be using the smart principles, and ultimately the program has to be good. Hard training is just like being busy. Okay? You don't have to be busy, you have to be productive. So same goes with training. Okay? So don't make this exercise harder than what it is, unnecessarily sort of pushing the athlete to do things which maybe he or she is not comfortable. Rather stick with basics. Let them do this to an extent which you have decided before the workout. Don't ever do any cardiovascular movement where the person starts the program and then you decide what to do. You have to have an idea that how much of cardiovascular exercise are we doing and for what is the reason. Are you doing it for maybe a boxer whom you want to help in maybe cutting down some calories, so you're doing slow continuous movement? Are you doing this for somebody who's recovering from post surgery, they've done their rehab and now they've come to you? Okay, so they're doing their strength and conditioning base level. Is it for that? You have to ask so many questions. What if you're just maybe a regular gym trainer who's probably working with various general population, and what if it's somebody who's a geriatric, okay, and an elder citizen? Would you want to push them? So these are all these questions that one has to answer before deciding why we are doing it. And then before doing, you should know exactly why. At his age, in his sport, what is it that I want to get out of this? Okay, and this again becomes a mistake that I see oftentimes, where many strength coaches get into a gym and then decide, okay, which machine is free? Let's get onto it and do something. Now that is about being busy but not productive. Okay. You need to have a plan before you get into the gym. Like if we're coming in and if we're doing a warm up, which is the machine we are going to use? And if it's not available, which is the second choice? Which is the third choice? We can't just come into a gym and decide that, okay, looks like the cross train is free and the athlete has never done it. And then we make it very hard for that person. Okay, let's bring this up, to the highest sort of amount and let's make it hard. Will that make sense? So this is something we need to remember. Don't make it hard and don't do any cardiovascular exercise without planning. Now we have started, it's how much time? We're now almost 19 minutes, right? Now in the last 19 minutes of this lecture, if you have seen, his arm has moved constantly. Okay, he might, because he's not really used to doing this very regularly, so he is doing this, but this might tomorrow make him feel a bit of a strain here. Okay, because it's not done. I should, as a strength coach, be aware of what might happen tomorrow. If he comes and says that, oh sir, today while playing I'm not able to push as much, I shouldn't be just bringing up the point and saying that, oh, you're just complaining for no reason. No, you should be pushing hard. Okay, I should be aware of what we did today, tomorrow as well. Okay, so these are some of those wisdom based approaches where you know exactly why you're doing something. Okay, and you know that if something goes wrong, what was it that caused it to go wrong? Okay, but if we don't keep track of the movement, especially of the movement pattern, how the joints move, we are just like on a, like what they call a wild goose chase, where we don't know what we're trying to achieve. We just walk into the gym, we think some machine is free, That approach I call is like the buffet approach, where you walk into a hotel and there's a nice buffet and you just go in and try different dishes. Okay, you try, why? Because you paid for it. Okay, there's a big choice. Strength training and especially strength and conditioning, working with athletes is not the same. Okay, even working with general population, you don't choose an exercise just because that is the latest machine or it looks fancy. You choose because you know exactly why you've chosen this exercise. So cross trainer, by now I hope you've got an idea. Most of these machines, whether it's a cross trainer, a cycle, even the treadmill, they tend to have the similar sort of metrics to check. So one is speed. The speed you can make it higher, lower. In a treadmill, it can be inclined. Here, the other thing would be, along with uh, this, it can be the heart rate. It will generally have a heart rate monitor, where if you hold, it gives you a heart rate reading. Can you just hold this, Varun, just to check what's your heart rate? Now, sometimes many of these machines, sometimes the heart rate monitor doesn't work. Okay, then you can use your own smartwatch if you have, or you can take your own heart rate as well. Okay, so it's showing, yeah, it's around 142. Okay, so Varun has been kind enough to do this. Okay, tomorrow if he gets some pain, we are not responsible for it. But yes, he's fit enough to get through this. Okay, so we have to remember these parts. Okay, it allows us all these things to read. But as you can see, it's something very simple. Some strength coaches might say, why do we have to think so much? I mean, come on, just exercise. But if that's what you look at, then you're not going to be the best that you can be, because then that anybody can do. Get any person into the gym, make them do some movements and go. What's special about you? What is so unique? If somebody else can do exactly the same things like you without thinking, then really what are you as well? So you have to make sure that every action needs to have a very, very specific reason. Break it down into 3 reasons why you're choosing a particular exercise, and then it all falls into place. Thank you. We'll be moving on now to the next exercise. Okay, so now if you check on the display screen of this machine, okay, we are going to press start. This is how most machines are. It will show you the time. It's 3 seconds, 4 seconds, and so on. This will show you the distance that it covers. Okay. The distance in this will be less than what's covered on a treadmill, okay, and even lesser than what's covered on a cycle. And the reason is that this, of course, from a movement pattern, it doesn't go that fast, right? So these become the thing. Now, if I have to increase the resistance, what do I do? You can see most of them will have some simple sort of things to put there. Level 3, you can see now this is becoming harder. Level 5, okay. So I'll reduce it again. I'll get it to level 1. So it goes. Now some of them have this fan as well. So this is where the air will come from. So now if you're on the cross trainer, this will give you some air coming in, which makes it easier. Many of them will have this fixed program. There'll be a manual one here. You can see there's a hill. Then there's what's called a fat burn, cardio, strength. Now here this is interesting. We should ask ourselves, even though it's written on this machine as strength, can a cardiovascular machine actually make you build strength? If you've been listening to all the lectures, you should be knowing, right? And there's a very interesting one. This machine says this program is for strength. Can a cardiovascular machine do that? Okay. So again, you should have the answers. So here there's an interval program and so on and so forth. Okay. So now here if you want to check the pulse, okay. So these are the sensors where you hold, okay, and if you can, yeah, Varun, if you can keep moving the machine, I'll just hold the, yeah, with that hand, just keep moving it because, yeah. So here I am trying to get my pulse. Let's just see. Scan again. Again once more. Try it. Scan once more. Yes, it should come. Let's see. Now sometimes it will come. It will come. Keep moving. Keep moving. Go back to heart rate. Yes, let it say. So as you can see, it says pulse now. Sometimes it takes time to read, okay, depending on how the scanner is, the sensor is. Okay, especially if it has sometimes sweat on it, it will be harder to read. So when you use this, again, a good practice is to put maybe just clean it with some cleaner or just with your towel. As you can see now, it's showing 90. Okay, so these are the standard sort of uh, movements and all the metrics that can be done. So you can see kilocalories, all of it. Now, one very interesting thing, and this I always say, and today probably in this video you can see it. Now, so far, okay, now this is the pulse. Speed is this, right? 54 rotations per or revolutions per minute. Okay, the speed here is also showing 19.17 kilometers per hour. Okay, now something else to see, level 1, right? Met, your that's the metabolic equivalent. If I'm not wrong, yes, my exercise physiology is right. It is that. Now time is this, okay? Distance is this. Now interestingly, I want you to note, okay, pulse kilocalories. Now what is unique here? It's showing calories burnt. Is there a human on this? Is there any person on this? No. So what we have to understand is that machines can't read, and I always say this, any machine, it cannot read whether there's a human or not. And this brings us to that interesting point which we have covered about technology, AI, right? So artificial intelligence is important, but it is us humans who can see whether there's a person standing or not, okay? And to know whether it's benefiting or not. Okay, because right now it's telling that the person on this, the imaginary person, has burned 27 calories. And that person again has, you know, is doing a distance of this. But is there a person on top? So this is something we need to understand, right? These calories burnt or anything, a machine just uses certain sort of data which has been there to give you this score. But is it actually that is something where we have to understand as coaches, and that's where strength and conditioning becomes not just a science, but an art as well. Okay? Where it knows exactly what to do, how much to do, and for whom to do, which person to do it for, and which sport to do it for. Okay, let's move now to the exercise cycle to give you an idea of how that is to be used. Okay?